gratitude is connected to creativity. I feel that when we're grateful, we're more receptive, we're more open. It's kind of like comedy in a way. When you laugh, you let your guard down. Well, when you're grateful, you're vulnerable and you kind of lean into that, and it makes you more open.
Here's the key to my front door. You got a pillow if you lost yours. You got a seat at my table. You got a here's somebody who believes you. Let truth remind you. You've always got a place to go to. You got a home.
Welcome to The Creator's Journey. I'm your host, Charles Gupton. In each show, I'll talk with creative leaders who face the same fears and obstacles we all face. What makes these folks effective are the processes they've developed that allow them to push through the darkness to consistently ship their work and make a difference. If you've ever felt that your fears and insecurities are getting the best of you, just know that you're not alone. Every creator who works from the heart faces the same challenges. I would love for you to join our community at thecreatorsjourney.com for ideas and inspiration that will bring light and direction to your journey.
Here's the key to my front door. You got a pillow if you lost yours. You got a seat at my table. You got a home. Here's somebody who believes you. Let truth remind you. You've always got a place to go to. You got a home.
Lissa Cowan is a storyteller. She's worked as an editorial director in the book publishing industry, as a copywriter, and as a magazine writer for numerous publications. She's also published her own novel, Milk Fever. All of this experience has combined to give Lissa a solid grounding that gives her the expertise to help other writers find their footing and confidence. That's why I'm excited to have Lissa join me on today's episode to share her thoughts on how creatives can find our voices and deal with the uncertainties and noise in our heads while still producing and shipping our work. Her love of reading and her list of recommended books sealed the deal to make me want some time with her mind. Welcome, Lissa.
Thank you so much, Charles. It's so wonderful to be here. It's an honor.
Thank you. Well, I just love your Lissa's Best book pages on your website. Talk with me about your reading habits, or does addiction better describe it?
It's probably a bit of an addiction, yes, I would say. I'm a voracious reader. I love to read different types of books. I don't stick to one particular type of book. There are people who, maybe just read mystery novels or just read detective novels or literary fiction. And I'm just really curious. I'm a curious reader. So I read different kinds of nonfiction. I read biographies, memoirs. I think that's part of the journalist in me that is just always seeking and wanting to see what's out there. And I wouldn't say I'm not a difficult reader at times. I mean, there are things that if I pick up a book and I don't like it, I'm not necessarily going to finish it. But I'm interested in all sorts of expressions of reading.
What surprises me often when writers are not voracious readers, I just think that's where one hones the craft as well as inspiration as well. So it's surprising when somebody that's a writer
that's
is
very
not
true.
also a
and
reader.
Actually, I started when I went to university and studied English. That was my main impetus to study English, was not to teach the books that I was studying, but it was to eventually write a book of my own or several books of my own. And so I was there as a bit of a researcher or a fly on the wall, reading to see what was out there. And it was a great experience.
Tell me about your growing up climbing trees, pretending you were ill so you could stay home from school and read books, and in general, making life for your younger siblings unpleasant.
Oh dear. Yes. Well, I think I was fairly young when I was making life for my younger siblings unpleasant. But I did. It's funny because my mother was a nurse. She was a public health nurse, and I actually fooled her sometimes. I would put the the thermometer just a little bit in the tea, so I could, because I knew how to read the thermometer, so I could tell if I was just a little bit, or just so it would seem like I had a little bit of a fever. I did that a couple times, and then I felt guilty and never did it again. But yeah, I wanted to stay home and write and read and climb trees, and I felt that the education system. Obviously, I didn't think that then when I was a child, but I wasn't interested. I felt quite bored in school, and I just felt that staying at home was I could create my own world. I could write or do whatever I wanted and explore, and I was learning at the same time. Um, and I just felt that I wasn't learning as much as when I was at home.
I was not much on school learning. I loved reading a lot, and so I did. I asked because I did a lot of the same thing, or at least tried to, and get away with it. But I got caught pretty severely at some point when I tried to heat the thermometer up with a match, and it was, I don't know,
Oh dear.
peaked out at like 110 or whatever it was, and beyond the point a child would be alive, and so
Right.
the jig was up for me at that point, and could never work again. Oh,
Oh dear. Yeah, you're the first person I've met, Charles, that has talked about heating up the thermometer. I think I was feeling a bit sheepish about revealing that. So I feel I'm in good company now.
I tried everything and got away with some,
Yeah.
but I had quite a sleuth for a mother, so I got caught at a lot of them as well. But that didn't keep me from trying.
Yes.
We've both read the book Daily Rituals and know the power of daily disciplines. Describe your daily routine for me. What are some of the practices that keep you balanced and refreshed so that you can be most productive?
Well, I find that my most creative, productive time is early in the morning, and not too early, but I get up at 6 in the morning and I write. Sometimes it's free writing. Sometimes it's something that I'm working on, something specific that I'm working on. I usually have 2 or 3 writing projects on the go, and then once one of them gets a little bit further, then I'm just completely devoted to that one. But I feel that yeah, for me, really, it's all about showing up, and even if I'm not feeling that great about writing, or feel like I'm not inspired that day, or maybe have a little bit of a sore throat, I'm always pretty much always getting up and starting my writing practice, and I found that consistency it has just brought me so much joy. And it's not always easy when you get up and you don't necessarily want to sit down and write, but most of the time I do want to, but not every single day. It's that persistent, showing up that that has really enabled me to finish projects that I've started, and also brought me a lot of joy, and brought me some just, I think, unexpected pleasures. I mean, sometimes when you wake up and you think, oh, I don't really feel like starting the day. I want to stay in bed a little bit longer, and then I end up on this journey with my writing, and it just takes me somewhere where I hadn't expected, and it's just truly, I'm in love with it. I'm in love with it.
Yeah, I found that if I miss doing morning rituals, that everything else seems to just be unstable for the day. Mm-hmm. And of late, I have been breaking a lot of the rituals because I've had a lot of extra work of editing and other things to do. So I'll cheat my creative, writing time.
Yes.
And I just find I'm irritated for a lot of the rest of the day, and it's rather annoying. But when I remembered reading in Daily Rituals, I marked up the book with a number of inspiring artists, and I picked it back up in preparation for our conversation, and gone back to one essay or overview of Anthony Trollope that talked about getting up at 5:30 every morning to be at the table. And it was also my practice, he said, to allow myself no mercy. Then went on to talk about his mother, who had inspired him by being up every day at 4 a.m.
Oh, my goodness.
And had 3 hours of writing in before it was time for her to serve breakfast. I just thought, wow, that's commitment, and was an inspiration to me.
It is really inspiring. I mean, when you think of what time, some monks get up around the world, to start their daily meditation practice. I know when I did a 10-day meditation retreat a few years ago, and we got up at 4 with the gong. So 6 o'clock really doesn't seem that early. But I should mention, Charles, that I do, when I get up in the morning, I do a meditation practice. And then I start my writing. So I don't roll out of bed and write right away. But I do feel that my practice helps me. It helps me have a clear mind for creating. And I also find that daily exercise really works. I don't do that necessarily in the morning, but today I went on a beautiful run, right beside the ocean, and it's it helps clear your head and keep focused, I think, when you do any kind of vigorous exercise.
Well, now that you're on processes, what are some other processes that help you stay grounded and productive, keeping your work consistently out there?
Well, I try to spend a fair amount of time in nature. I find nature really grounds me and reminds me of what I'm here for on the earth, and what brings me joy and what helps me produce the work that I'd like to present to the world. So I find, walking in nature or doing hikes in nature is really beneficial to me, and also having a tribe of people, having people around me who are creative and are also productive. I have an accountability buddy that I meet with every couple of weeks, or we actually Skype because she's in another city, and we connect and just talk about things that are going right, things that are going wrong. I find having that supportive community is just so helpful. I don't think I would be where I am today in terms of my writing and my creative process without having that support network.
Of course. Well, one of the revelations from Daily Rituals that had astounded me when I first read it was the number of writers and artists that work a primary job that allowed them to focus on their work without the worry of making their creativity pay their bills.
Yes.
And Liz Gilbert, in her book Big Magic, also talks about her work in myriad jobs such as waitressing and bartending, so that she could devote herself to her craft of writing.
Yes.
Well, what's been your experience around that, either in your work or as you work with other writers and encouraging them in their process?
Yeah, it seems like the full-time job gets a bad rap. I mean, I myself included. It's when you're working and you think, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. This isn't my passion. This isn't my love. When I was writing my novel, Milk Fever, I was working a full-time job in the not-for-profit sector, and I would wake up super early in the morning and write. I would write on weekends. I would sometimes write at lunchtime in the office. And it paid the bills, and it helped provide that stability for me to do my writing. And I think it's important to acknowledge that, and not necessarily, there are people, I know a lot of people who are in jobs that they absolutely hate, and I'm not suggesting that they should embrace them even if they don't like them, but I think there is definitely something to be said for having that financial stability. And okay, so you're not able to write, or do the art that you're doing, every day from 9 to 5, but it's enabling you to have that stability, to have a roof over your head, to be able to pay your bills and eat, and still pursue your dream. And I think that's something to be thankful for in many cases.
And take the pressure off so that focus can be, again, on creativity, not just grinding out something.
Yes.
Again, hopefully that will pay some bills at whatever cost.
Exactly. I worked for years as a copywriter, and I felt that I was giving so much of myself creatively through my advertising copy or whatever copy I was writing, and it was challenging. I was still working on my other projects, but I found it quite challenging to be doing the two because because I was accessing some of the same resources, and so I've switched the way that I do things now, and I'm focusing on mentoring and teaching and helping writers, and also people who don't necessarily consider themselves writers, but they want to maybe write a memoir. They feel that they've got maybe a book in them, or they'd like to take some time and be creative either through visual art or poetry. I feel like, I don't know. I mean, I talk almost every day to people who they're yeah, I mean, I believe that everybody's creative, and sometimes we don't necessarily give ourselves the time to be able to explore that creativity. And when you open the door and you start to give more strength to that part of your life, it's amazing what things blossom. And that's one of the things that I'm passionate about is helping people to discover that or to cultivate that, whether it be writing or art or whatever kind of creative outlet it is.
If you can, go back into the use of the same resources, because something that I have fought in myself is that if I get up and put myself into one creative endeavor for 2 or 3 or 4 hours, say in the morning if I'm working in the office, it's difficult for me to shift, to keep that going. Now, if I'm on location shooting photographs, I can keep at that one task of creating photographs or images. But it seems like if I've done that in the morning and I've got to shift my creativity to something else, that I feel like I've really not emptied the well, but I've drawn hard from it. And using the same resources but shifting it to a different task seems to be exhausting to me. Is that what you were talking about, or can you dig into that in your experience at all?
Yes, I think, yeah, it sounds quite similar, Charles. I think I know you're accessing similar parts of your creativity to produce something, and sometimes during the day you only have a certain amount. It's like, stores or something. Um, and again, I mean, it's interesting because as we're talking about this, I'm thinking about how for years when I first started writing and started considering myself a professional writer, I would, when I was feeling stuck with my writing, I would go to painting and I would paint, and then that would help me, that would feed my writing. And so I would go back to my writing, and then I would do that, and then I would go back to my painting. And it seemed that the two were different enough that they helped each other along. Whereas if your day job is copywriting, and you're having to be quite creative in that, and then you're say working on a novel. I did find that was quite exhausting to me, because I only had so much so much creative juice during the day, and then it might have run out by 2 or 3, and then I'd have something else. So they were just too similar. Now, I also really love to cook, and I don't find, for instance, if I'm writing for 4 or 5 hours, and then I go and cook, that I have no juice left, because it's a completely different art form. So I'm still, really creative in the kitchen, but I'm, not having to write some really creative sentences, if that makes any sense.
Absolute sense. Yeah, that's why I wanted you to dig back into that. What are some of the processes you encourage writers to engage in to deal with the obstacles and fears that deter them from creating and shipping their work?
Well, I think sometimes we don't necessarily even know why we're being, what the obstacles are, or why we're not able to push forward. Sometimes it's it's obvious that we just don't have enough time. Everybody's so time strapped these days, and it's really hard to even sometimes find 15 or 20 minutes in a day. So that's an obvious concrete issue that obviously needs to be looked at, because if we don't have any time, then we have no time to create. But the other maybe more psychological or emotional obstacle is feeling maybe that we're, that we shouldn't be doing this, or that we're putting ourselves first and we shouldn't be doing that, or there's that big, you know, resistance that Stephen Pressfield talks about in The War of Art and Do the Work. And everybody has resistance. He calls it a universal force. And it's something that people who, the Picassos of the world have it, and people who have absolutely no, who are just starting out have it. And I think being aware of those things, being aware of those obstacles, whether it be voices in your head that are saying, oh, why do you try and you're not going to get anywhere, being aware of those voices, and also being aware of the fact that we all face resistance, no matter who you are, no matter what you're creating. There's going to be resistance there saying, why are you doing this? Don't go ahead. And I think being aware of some of those things and having some things in place that can help you get over that. I find sometimes with resistance, I know with my novel, it took me a good 2 months to finish my last page.
Oh my word.
It was more, yeah, it was more difficult than writing the whole novel. And at that point in time, I didn't know about resistance. I didn't know how difficult. I mean, I knew that I was resisting, but I wasn't aware of it as I see it now, as a universal force, as something that everybody goes through. And I did everything. I went out with friends. I probably wrote some poetry. I probably cleaned my house a few times. I did all sorts of things, but finished my book. And my agent was writing me emails saying, "Lissa, are you done yet?" And no, I was resisting. I was resisting big time. And I on some level, I realized that I was resisting and that I needed to finish it. And I was so close. And of course I did finish it. But now I really do see, whenever I'm resisting, I see it for what it is. It's almost like there's somebody in the room tugging at me saying, "Come on out and play. You don't need to finish this." I mean, that's how real and almost visceral it is for me now. And so I do recognize it. And sometimes I'll cut myself some slack, and I'll say, okay, I'm going to go out for a run for half an hour. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to finish what I set out to do. So it's really, some of it is, it's really, I think, an awareness, having that awareness that these things do happen. And, just because you're resisting, or the voices are saying, don't go ahead, doesn't mean you should listen to them. It doesn't mean you need to push them down either. I think it's important to acknowledge them, but it's not. I think Stephen Pressfield says this really well in The War of Art. It's not who you are. So you don't need to follow that direction.
Yeah, it seems more homes get cleaned, or more cabinets get cleaned out, or laundry done in the face of resistance or a creative project than at any other time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So maybe we should be thankful on some level.
Maybe there needs to be a service called Artists Cleaning Houses in the midst of novel writing or some other creative endeavor.
That's right.
What are some ways that, as you're working with writers, that you help them reconnect with their creativity when they feel like they're dry or they've lost it in some way?
Well, typically what I would do is have a conversation with them and just see where they're at. What's going on in their lives. What have they been excited about? What has brought them joy in the past in terms of their writing? And just kind of, get a feel for their process, for what interests them and for who they are, and see if I can help them. And usually that conversation creates an opening. I think, sometimes depending on what's going on in our lives or where we're at with our creative process, we can close ourselves down and really creativity asks us to be open to the possibility of something, right? We don't know what, but it's saying yes, and that's the first thing. So if a writer is feeling just really lackluster, and I don't have any more work in me, or I'm not able to move forward, it's having that conversation, then seeing where they're at, and if they're working on a project, what do they feel stuck about? And maybe it doesn't have anything to do with the project. Maybe it's something going on in their own lives. And I mean, I don't have a psychology background, so I'm not going to be psychoanalyzing them. But as a somebody who has written for several years, and has heard voices in my head, and I still do from time to time. I try to help them in any way I can.
What are some of the excuses that you hear most often for not being able to make the changes?
Most of the time, it's I don't have enough time, or sometimes I'll hear, well, people don't read anyway, and it's just so hard to get published these days, and there's so much out there. It's overwhelming. Um, other things are, I see all these great writers, and I think, why should I add another book to the mix? What do I have to say? What do I have to say that's any different than what's already been said? Those are, I think, some of the things that come to mind.
What do you think are the mindsets that drive those voices?
I think probably, lack of just confidence in what you're doing. Maybe feeling a lack of support. Sometimes there might be people around, maybe in your family or your friends, that are saying, just like, what are you doing? And sometimes when people ask those questions around you, they might be well-meaning, but sometimes they themselves have, maybe they have a writing project in the drawer, maybe they have some artistic project that they're not working on as well. So it's not necessarily. Sometimes it can be, it can be projection, but I think, I mean, there are all sorts of reasons, but I mean, it's also really difficult in our society to slow down enough to listen to ourselves, and to be able to, sit in a room for half an hour and write. That's no easy task. We have, with social media, and some of us are working 2 and 3 jobs. I mean, we don't live in a society that cultivates quiet. And I try in my own life to cultivate quiet as much as I can. But I mean, I'm as addicted to social media as the next person, but I try to balance that with being in nature and slowing down as much as I can, and realizing, okay, tonight, maybe, Lisa, you don't need to, do 3 or 4 things. Maybe you should just watch a movie, or maybe you should, go to bed early. So I think, just really practicing self-love in that way. I think as creators, we tend to be really hard on ourselves, especially writers. Well, I think all creators do, actually. And I think practicing and acknowledging, that maybe we've done too much, and when we need to, slow down and just be good to ourselves, I think is really important. And also celebrating. I find this is something that I've only just figured out over the past year, that actually celebrating when an article gets published, or when I write a chapter of a book is really important. And that hasn't been part of my writerly persona. It's only been in the past year. I've actually tended to do the opposite. When I've written something, I say, okay, Lisa, now you've only written 1 chapter. What about the next? What about the next 25? But I realize that that's not very productive. That actually does not help one finish anything. I think what helps me anyway, in terms of my writing, is acknowledging that I'm working and that I'm being consistent in it, and celebrating those little wins, and taking time out for friends or family when I've done some work, and not pushing myself, I find is actually, yeah, who knew? It's actually better for my creativity.
I keep threatening myself that I'm going to back off a little bit and celebrate when things go well, and that nagging voice in the back of my head keeps saying, if you let up, you'll get lazy. If you let up, it'll all go away. You've got to keep pushing, 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 striving. And it's been probably that and the imposter's syndrome voice have been two of the they sing a pretty good melody and harmony. They sing well together, and it's been really tough. So I need to listen to this repeatedly.
Yes, well, I do as well, and I hear you, Charles. I mean, for years and years and years, I would push myself, and I mean, I'm not saying that, we should rest on our laurels and, oh, I don't feel like doing this, writing this today, so I'm not going to do it. But I think there is something to be said for actually being kind to yourself, and saying, you know what? I'm doing a pretty good damn job. I've been writing every day this week, and I feel so good about it, and I'm feeling so I'm feeling so grateful for how much and not necessarily how much, but just really basking in that, and letting yourself just allow it. I feel that I'm more productive now when I don't push myself than when all those years from my 20s, my 30s, all those years of pushing myself really did not help me. They didn't help me. I mean, now I have those organizational things in place where I can, I yeah, it's hard. It is a balancing act. It is not easy at all. And obviously, if I'm, working on an article and it needs to be done tomorrow, then yes, I'm going to stay an extra hour and I'm going to finish it. I'm not going to go out and have some champagne, but I think there is, yeah, I really do think that I'm more productive with treating myself with more kindness. How's that?
Well, circle back for me, if you will, to gratitude, which you just mentioned as part of your process. How has that transformed, or is it in the process of transforming the way you write and think and approach your work?
Yes, absolutely, 100%. I have a gratitude practice that I do every single day. And actually, just recently, I heard that a friend of mine she runs a storytelling event in Toronto, Canada. She was saying that at the end of each week, or sorry, the beginning of each week, she writes down 40 things that she'd like to celebrate from the previous week. And I thought, oh, gee, that's even better than than the gratitude. I mean, being grateful every day has transformed my creative practice. But I love that idea of focusing on those wins, because I do believe that what you focus on grows. And I've seen that in my own life. And I do feel that gratitude is connected to creativity. I feel that when we're grateful, we're more receptive, we're more open. It's kind of like comedy in a way. When you're at a comedy show, or if you are interested, if you listen to any comedians, when you laugh, you let your guard down. Well, when you're grateful, you're vulnerable, and you kind of lean into that, and it makes you more open. And I think that is, I don't know, I haven't quite figured it out, but it feels to me that it's a sister or a brother to creativity. I think they work really well together.
Yeah, that's profound. That's good. Do you want to give a shout out to your friend in Toronto?
Yes, I do. Marcia Shonter.
I suspected as such.
She's at yesyesmarcia.com, and she's a storytelling coach. You know her?
I do know Marcia. I suspected that might be her.
Yeah, she's wonderful. I love her to bits.
That's funny. Small world. Are there any recurring themes or patterns in your life that you want to change? Any areas that you're struggling in still
Yeah.
that give you a sense of empathy or compassion with the folks that you're working with as you help them?
Well, yes, and I think this is something that really never goes away. Even when you turn pro, you still have voices in your head saying, "What are you doing this project for? And what are you working on this for?" And again, the resistance, which I said before, comes up all the time, no matter who you are or what you're working on. And oftentimes it'll come up just when you're about to finish something, which I found out when I wrote my novel, because that was a big project. Uh, but yes, I still hear voices in my head saying things like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? I recently started working on a nonfiction project. It's about a tree. And I was recently on a small island and I was interviewing some people about trees. And then I got home. I was sitting on the ferry, and I was thinking, why am I working on this project? I've got these two other projects here, and they seem really ripe and ready to go. But my curiosity, my creativity is going in this direction. And then I just, I sat down on the ferry. I was looking out of the water, and I just said, you know what, Lisa? You just need to be open to this process and just go with the flow and see what happens. And that's something that I have to tell myself repeatedly, when I'm going in a different direction. Well, maybe I need to go in this direction a little bit further just to see what happens. And then maybe I'll go back to that other project. But yeah, I have those voices, and I have those that resistance, just like people I work with, just like the writers that I work with. So,
if you had the resources to drill down into and make a difference in just one particular area, what would you focus on?
I would focus on creativity. I believe that this is connected to my experience growing up and feeling like being creative was a heady thing, was an intellectual thing, and was something that came from my mind. And it does, obviously, to a certain extent. I can't write without my brain. But I feel that in our culture, there's a disconnect between the body and the mind where creativity comes from, where creativity is concerned. And I feel that a contribution that I would like to make is to help people understand and integrate creativity into their bodies, because I do believe, it sounds a bit abstract to say that, but in Hindu mythology, it's thought that the seat of creativity is actually in the abdomen, and in Japanese thought, the mind is in the belly, or I don't know if they would say mind, but the thinking is in the belly, and I feel that when I create from that place, it's authentic, it's real. It doesn't mean my head doesn't come into it, but I think that some of that has to do, well, with me wanting to explore this with my with people I work with is just that we do live in such a fast-paced world, and things are going so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
We're in our heads running around, and if we could get back into our bodies, I think that would help us be more creative and be able to explore our creativity more deeply. So that's something that I've been exploring in my own life, and that I've been exploring through some courses that I've developed on writing. So,
do you think there's a connection between the deep breathing of meditation and then your turning from there into your writing and the creative process after meditation, after deep breathing? Do you see a connection between those two?
I do see a connection between those two. I think that definitely meditation clears my mind, it calms my body, and it makes me feel more receptive and open to creating. So I feel that when I finish my meditation practice and then I put pen to paper or I start writing on my computer, that those words are they're coming from a true place. They're coming from a place of clear mindedness and of groundedness. So yes, I definitely believe that there's a connection, and it does help me be more creative to do that meditation practice.
What defines the creator's journey, or possibly just the creative process for you?
I think what defines it is being open to exploring, being curious. I mean, creativity is everything. I mean, creativity doesn't just happen when I'm sitting down to write. It's something that is part of my life, no matter what I do. I think that the creative journey is being alive, it's being receptive, it's being open to others, it's having empathy, having compassion. It's that openness and creativity that help us to not only create and put forth or bring forth what we need to in the world, but also to connect to other people. So it's not something that's narcissistic, or it's not something that's inward looking, though there's a lot of that, obviously. It's also making that connection with others.
I'm going to jump back to your reading list again because I'm curious about what has helped lead you to this point and where in your mind some of the best material or encouragement is coming from. What are the top 3 to 5 books that you would recommend to someone who needs a shot of encouragement to their personal creative process?
Well, I would say The Creative Habit is my absolute all-time favorite book, and it's by a dance choreographer, an American dance choreographer called Twyla Tharp, who's absolutely incredible, and she writes about her daily practice, her daily rituals. And it's astounding. It's something that I read several times a year. I'm always dipping into it. She has exercises in there to help people who are feeling creatively stuck. All of the dance pieces that she's done, she talks about her process, how she puts things in shoe boxes, and they're all in her house on shelves, and each shoebox represents a dance piece that she's choreographed. And so when she first starts to think about a dance piece, she puts things in there that inspire her. So everybody has their own process, but it's interesting to see how, somebody like her, who is very very established and very successful in her field, is what her process is like. I find it really really invigorating. And Stephen Pressfield, I think definitely Do the Work or The War of Art. He's fantastic. Whenever I hit that resistance and I feel like I can't go forward, I read Do the Work and I say, oh yeah, I remember now. That's what resistance feels like.
That's right.
That's what resistance looks like. Yeah, so he's very helpful.
That's right.
And there's another book, I know you said just 3, but there's one that I've just started reading last week, and a couple of friends have said, oh, you have to read this book, it's wonderful. And I'm so enjoying it. So even though I haven't finished it, I would love to say what it is. And it's called The Art of Possibility. And it's by
Benjamin Zander?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so he's the conductor of the Boston Philharmonic, and his wife is a psychotherapist.
That book has come up in conversations 3 times this week.
Oh, my goodness.
In last week's conversation with Peter Cowder, we were talking about it, and it had come up in another conversation with someone else in a different arena as well. So
that is very funny.
Hilarious. And any others? I'm not limiting you to 3. I just wanted to give you a few to pop out with. If you've got a couple more, throw them out there. I love this.
Okay, sure. Well, I mean, I think I like reading books on meditation, and so I think anything by Pema Chodron is good. I mean, I would I'm just trying to think of another book on in terms of writing, a writing book on writing
Right.
by Stephen King
Right.
is a good one. I've read that a few times, and I kind of keep going back to that one. So that's a kind of steady book in my repertoire. So yeah, there are lots of good ones out
I
there.
knew we would get along well. You want to talk a little bit about the 100-day project?
Sure. Well, the 100-day project is something that a designer started. She's in the U.S., but I don't know whereabouts, unfortunately. But her name's Luna, ELLE Luna, LUNA, and she started this project where she posted on Instagram something that she'd created every day for 100 days. And it just really took off like wildfire. And it's in several different countries. A couple of my artist friends, a photographer and an artist, visual artist, have both done it. They did it last year, and they said it was really difficult sometimes, but it really challenged them. It really, it pushed their buttons, and it really helped them grow as artists, as creative people. So I started the first day was April 19th for this year. Then I know a couple of other people who are doing it, so we're supporting each other. It's really nice, to see what other people are doing. I have a photographer friend who's doing pictures of her dog, and it's difficult sometimes, I guess, when you just have one subject matter, but you have to photograph that subject matter in different ways, because obviously you're exploring your creativity, and you're pushing the boundaries, and so it's neat to see what she's doing, and every day I really don't know what I'm going to take pictures of, and it seems so far it's been interesting, and it's been scary too. I've been freaked out, and like I said, I'm only on day 13, but I'm really glad I signed up. I think it's really worthwhile.
Yeah, El Luna's work has been transformative. Her book, the title of which is escaping me right now, was incredibly transformative to me to think about. I think it actually pairs well with Liz Gilbert's book, Big Magic, in terms of inspiring one to do that work. And something else that you mentioned there also, just the creativity that is inspired out of very tight constraints can be very helpful in terms of what you're doing, in terms of photographing hands. To put yourself within those constraints and then produce creatively out of those constraints rather than using it as an excuse not to create.
I totally agree. It's helping me. I feel like it's allowing me to really push myself creatively, and figure out. I mean, it's actually, yeah. I don't know. I'd like to see what it's going to be like after day 100, but I think sometimes it's true when you put constraints on yourself like that. It's amazing where you can go. You have no idea. It's just it's a mystery, and I'm really really happy to be going on this journey, because I don't know what the end result's going to be, or I don't know how the path is going to look, how the journey's going to look, and that's what's so exciting about it, and freaky as well.
If it wasn't scary, it wouldn't be worthwhile doing.
Definitely.
So tell me, Lissa, what do you want to be remembered for?
Yeah, it's interesting to think about that question, because if you had asked me that question 15 years ago, I would have said, "Oh, my witty prose, or my my characters in my books." But no, I think now I would say that I would like to be remembered for my authenticity, for how helpful I am. Hopefully I'm helpful to some people. It's interesting because I just think of I think of the things, I guess I've kind of changed what things are important to me. And I think that helping people out and feeling that they belong is really important. When I was growing up, I felt like a bit of a night outsider. I wasn't, I guess my friends were all quite loud. I guess they were A personalities, and I wasn't like that. And I used to, sit for hours in trees and climb trees and spend lots of time with animals in the yard. We lived on quite a large acreage. So I actually had the run of, the fields and the forests. And I did. I felt like an outsider, and I feel like part of the work that I'm doing now is about helping people feel that they belong. Because when I was a kid, and I was obviously deeply creative, I didn't really feel that there was a place for me in the world. And I think that a lot of people do feel like that. I believe that people do. And I think when you're an adult, you might even feel like that more so because you're further away from your childhood, or further away from the things that maybe used to give you joy. I don't mean to say that all adults are joyless, but just sometimes that, as you get older, what's that expression about, or the I don't know if it's a psalm or putting away childish things, but I think sometimes, there's that idea of, oh, I'm an adult now, so I better be mature, and I don't have time for painting or, playing or that sort of thing. Obviously, a lot of the people in my life are, don't necessarily feel that way. My friends are very creative, and they really feed that part of themselves. But I think there are lots of people out there who are feeling that they're lost, and they're not able to open the door to their creative selves, and I feel like that's something that I can help them with.
Well, it seems to me that we confuse in our culture, or maybe just in our language, childlike with childish, because I know a number of people who have lost their childlike qualities, but they seem to cling to their childish ways of acting and treating people, whereas the childish needs to be let go of, but keep that sense of wonder that too frequently we give up.
Definitely. I think you've hit the nail on the head, Charles, in terms of that word wonder. Just, sometimes we get ground down by the day to day, and we don't necessarily feel that sense of wonder. And it's not something that is magic that, we need to wait for. I think it's something that we need to cultivate actively and try to bring more of into our lives. And again, that goes back to being open and being curious and looking at the world around us. And, when you go by a homeless person, it's difficult if you live in a city where there are lots of people who, aren't doing very well and are on the street. And maybe that bothers you. You go by a homeless person, and that person doesn't have anywhere to live, doesn't have any food. But just, maybe doing something in your community to help people who are homeless. So creativity isn't necessarily just about the paintbrushes and the the sculpting or the rug hooking or it's about that receptivity too, and connecting to your own humanity, but also to people around you, right?
Right, absolutely. Is there someone who is outside of the spotlight, but doing something important that's having an impact the world should know about?
Yes, well, yeah, there are a few people I can think of, but one in particular who comes to mind is Pamela Stracco. She's an artist and muralist, and she's doing incredible work, and I don't mention her solely because of her work. I also mention her because I feel that she is such an inspiration in terms of what she's putting out there. She has this fabulous newsletter about, how she sees the world. She takes these amazing photographs, and so she Yeah, she has a way of looking at the world that's just really magical and makes me want to create and to just keep up with my creative practice. And so I definitely think people should check her out. She does these incredible mountain murals that are just so inspiring. They're just colors of blue and gray, and she does all sorts of things as an artist. She's a designer, and she draws as well, and yeah, her photographs are fantastic. So, but yeah, her newsletter, I highly encourage everybody to go and sign up to her newsletter, because I just find it, whenever it comes into my inbox, I'm just so excited to read it. It brings me great joy. So, yeah.
Well, great. We'll put links to that in the show notes so people can find it easily. Is there one thought that you'd like to leave with listeners that you believe could make a difference in their lives?
I would say be kind. Be kind to yourself and be kind to others.
If folks want to connect with you, what platforms or means are the best for you and for them to connect with you?
Well, I'm a big fan of Twitter, so I'm on Twitter quite a bit. And I'm also on Facebook and Instagram. I'm actually doing the 100-Day Project. I'm taking pictures of people's hands on Instagram, so that's been good fun so far.
Oh, that's great. Well, Lissa, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Charles. It's been wonderful to speak with you, and I've really cherished this time to be able to speak about the creator's journey. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to The Creator's Journey. If you enjoyed our theme music, the name of the song is You've Got a Home by Krista Wells. If you enjoyed the show and would like to see it fare well, I would appreciate having you go to iTunes and subscribe. While you're there, if you give us a favorable rating and review, it'll make a huge difference in helping a newcomer easily find it. If you want to email me with feedback or suggestions for potential guests, or if you want to connect with any of the guests or find links to the people and resources that were mentioned in each episode, you can do all of that at thecreatorsjourney.com. Till soon, my friend. I want to respect your time this evening. I just appreciate so much your willingness to sit down and have a conversation about some of these matters, which can be vulnerable and expose oneself. So thank you tremendously for carving out a place for us to talk.